This young man has been lying on the ground for 2 whole days, but he doesn't dare to move at all because right behind him is a cliff towering 66 meters high. A single misstep could cause him to fall and be crushed. He digs hard into the ground, but the soft sand offers no support. His body begins to slide uncontrollably towards the cliff's edge. He can see he's about to fall. He has to use his face to brake. Finally, he manages to slow his fall. Just then, his phone in the backpack rang. Should he take it? He's torn inside. What if it's his wife calling? Not answering could be scarier than falling off the cliff, but just raising a hand a bit, he would surely fall. So he carefully adjusts his position, pressing his face down. Then, he frees a hand to grab his phone. After much effort, he finally manages to get his phone. But right after, he finds himself right at the edge of the cliff. Below are dark, sharp rocks. After just 2 hours of mental and physical torment, he is on the brink of collapse. Suddenly, he starts mumbling, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He was counting how often waves hit the rocks. He hoped to increase his chances of survival by using the waves' cushioning. When the seconds reached his expectations, he quickly let go. He jumped hard. He landed in the sea, but sadly, the water wasn't deep enough. As he hit the water, he hit the rocks. Fortunately, he quickly woke up. This was just the beginning of his trials. After he painfully crawled to the shore, he immediately checked his body. Except for a cut on his hand, he seemed fine. But when he tried to stand up, he found he couldn't walk at all. When he regained his senses, he realized he had another cut on his head. However, none of these were the worst. From the head to his waist when he fell, his legs had gone numb. Just then, he suddenly remembered he hadn't returned his wife's call. He quickly grabbed his phone from his back, but the phone is so... No matter how hard he tried, it wouldn't turn on. This left him in a state of despair. He had no choice but to shout for help. Help! But in this desolate place, who will save him? Ahead was a steep cliff, and behind him stretched the vast sea. Out of options, he had to take off his clothes and treat his wound simply to save energy. He lay on the rocks and slowly closed his eyes. When he awoke again, he regained his calm. The pain in his back urged him to escape soon. He began to look around. He realized climbing the cliff was hopeless, but fortunately, there was an isle afar. This became his only hope. Gathering his courage, he rowed and leapt back into the sea. But things were much harder than he had imagined. With his legs numb and one hand severely injured, he could only struggle to paddle with one arm. Soon he exhausted all his strength. He could only float on the sea. Just then, suddenly, a sharp pain struck his abdomen. He choked on a mouthful of water. His body began to sink slowly. At the brink of life and death, he thought of his wife once again. He refused to quit life like this. A strong will to survive. It sparked amazing potential in him. He desperately paddled upwards with one arm. He finally resurfaced, but he was already completely exhausted. Swimming to the island was out of reach. He returned to the spot in despair, lying on the beach to regain strength. A full day since he fell from the cliff. It had been a complete day. On the beach, he carved a distress signal with all his strength, but they lay there lonely. No one showed up. Just then, a surfboard miraculously floated by. It brought the man a glimmer of hope. He gave it his all, support his weary body with his hands, struggling to move toward the surfboard. Then, just as he was about to touch hope, a massive wave suddenly hit. It struck his head forcefully again, knocking him unconscious. But when he woke up again, he realized he was swept into deeper waters. By then, he was far from the shore. The waves grew stronger. In a dire moment, he acted quickly. He tightly wrapped his backpack strap around a rock to save him from being swallowed by the merciless sea. Just then, a helicopter flew by overhead. He struggled to shout for help, but the raging water kept his mouth shut. He could only watch as the helicopter drifted away. After a while, the massive waves finally calmed. His hand still gripped the rock wall tightly. Then, a seagull attacked his wounds. The sharp pain woke him up again. It had been a day and a half since his fall. During this time, he hadn't drunk a thing. If he didn't get water soon, he faced the danger of dehydration and shock. In despair, he spotted a can in the corner. He quickly reached to grab it, but it turned out to be bitter seawater. He lay on the ground in despair until he opened his eyes again. It was late at night. His legs were frozen, now purple. If he continued to delay, even if he were to be rescued, he would face the grim fate of amputation. To survive, he began a search around. He finally found a roll of aluminum foil and a stick. He carefully placed them into his backpack in case he needed them. But as time passed, his thirst grew stronger, almost to an unbearable level. So he dug a small peg, lined it with aluminum foil, planning to collect his urine for relief. But internal damage was severe. The urine he expelled was blood. It was inedible. As the temperature fell, he covered himself with everything he could find, yet he still shivered from the cold. Just then, the sky began to thunder and flash, seeming to signal an impending heavy rain. He hurriedly took out a can and lined the pit with aluminum foil again, planning to catch rainwater to drink. But the sky rumbles, but the rain's light. After waiting long, a few drops of rain finally fell. It wasn't even enough to wet his lips. He could only helplessly lick the dew off the tinfoil. Barely solved his thirst issue. Next, he started thinking of food. After dawn, he leaned against a rock, staying still, waiting for prey to come close, with a big stick firmly in hand, ready to attack at any moment. But when he saw a seagull near him, he realized he either overestimated his abilities or misjudged the seagull's wits. Half the day passed. He hadn't even caught a single feather. Angrily, he cursed fate's unfairness. But just that unfairness